Hey, Star Wars fans and Rule of the Galaxy fans, welcome back to another great episode. I believe we're at episode 86 now of Rule of the Galaxy. Last week we did a we did a bonus show. We had author Adam Bray, we had Steve Glosson from Geek Out Loud, we had Scott Rifen from My Star Wars Story. All of them come on and do a bonus show, and that was great to have them on board. And we did that in honor of my 50th birthday. So, yes, I'm officially old. Joe is an old man. But looking at my screen here, I've got some guys who outmatch me on the white whiskers, and they're probably younger than me. I know they're younger than me, but that's another story for another time. So, it's Joe in the pilot seat as usual. And with Rule the Galaxy, you can always follow us at Rule the Galaxy SW on Twitter. Email us at rulethelagacysw@gmail.com. Check us out on YouTube and Facebook at Just Rule the Galaxy. And as usual, I'll go around the room. We have an extra special guest tonight that we're all really excited about, but I'll start with one of our regular co-hosts, Nick Shesky. Nick, how are you tonight?
I'm doing great, Joe. Thanks for having me on. I love getting to do this, and I'll get out of the way because I know we do have an extra special guest, and I have some comments once we unveil. But I'm very excited about tonight. If you're tuning in and this is your first time to Rule the Galaxy, welcome. We're glad you're here.
Yes, we definitely are. We definitely are. So, and next on the list, another regular co-host, one of my the biggin, the Chewbacca of the group, Brent Dykman. How you doing, Brent?
I wish I could do a good Chewbacca roar on cue with that intro, but I got nothing for you on that. I can get them every now and then, but they are not like on cue.
You couldn't improv one and give us something?
Dude, seriously, it'll be terrible. like I said, I can do some, but like they are terrible when they're on when I'm like trying to get queued up for one.
Okay.
Doing great. My daughter just swam in her first I'll call it like fun swim meet. They do like a summer swim meet. And she did really well with the backstroke. My wife coached swimming for 19 years. And all of the people that knew my wife are like, she needs to have a swim coach, like just joking with my wife about how my daughter, but it was fun to watch her compete and get out of the pool and be excited. So back here for the show, talk the wars. I always like to talk the wars. And again, I will step out of the way because I want this man's voice to grace the airwaves.
Well, we will skip right over, but before we do, I tell you what, we got some great comments, Brent, on your most recent sound effect you did for Thor kissing Natalie Portman in yeah, all the geeks and nerds in the theater. Everybody loved that comment that you did there, and they love that sound effect. So we probably need to record that this weekend and just have it as a sound effect. So, but as these two have mentioned, here at Rule the Galaxy, you guys all know we're big fans of the books. Brent didn't used to be, but he's been roped into the dark side. And we all definitely lean towards the audiobooks. Why? Because we feel like it really draws us in and it makes us more part of the story. And it also helps us on time because you can do it while you're driving, while you're cutting the grass, while all those things. And this gentleman right here is somebody we all look up to. We all appreciate his work. Mr. Marc Thompson, who's been a voice actor for many years and who's done so many Star Wars books. Mark, thank you for joining the show, and thanks for being a part of what we're doing here at Rule the Galaxy.
Oh, thank you guys so much. It's a lot of fun to be here. You guys seem awesome.
We seem that way. Yes.
You're still out, Mark.
You are. I'm just like meeting you now.
It's early.
Awesome.
Well, good. Well, thank you so much. And I tell you what, Mark, before we jump in, just, we'll ask tons of questions later, but quick background on some things for you, where you're from, married, kids, all those kind of things. Any of that stuff you want to bring out here? Obviously, you're a big Star Wars fan because we're looking at you here with the Star Wars High Republic shirt on, which is awesome. Yeah. So just give the fans who maybe don't listen to audiobooks or don't know your great work, because I wrote down some other great things. I know Brent brought up G.I. Joe, which we'll talk about, but I've got some other little tidbits I'm going to throw your way later, but go ahead, give us a little background on Marc Thompson.
Oh, sure. So I grew up in Webster, New York, which is actually a suburb of Rochester, New York, so way upstate New York, and got bit by the acting bug and had a really great theater program there growing up, and kind of figured out that was something I was okay at and really enjoyed doing, and took a gamble and decided to want to pursue that and moved to New York City to study theater at NYU. And I went through that program and ended up staying here. And it's been 30 some odd years since then. And I'm still in the city. And I fell into voiceover. I think my sophomore year, there's like a bulletin board. This is back in the old days before the internet. You answer, little Post-it notes on taped to walls for auditions. So there was an audition for a cartoon that MTV was producing, and it was like a vampire show. And literally, the audition was you call and leave a message on an answering machine. And so I was like, okay, it's a vampire show. What should I do? So I called up and was like, hello, I'd like to be on your cartoon if that's okay. And I was doing like an Igor thing, and that got me in the door. That got me a call back, and that one didn't go into production. But this spinoff of this, there was this show many years ago called Beavis and Butthead that was on MTV, and they did a spinoff. Yeah, exactly. They did a spinoff called Daria, which was like she was the kind of goth, not goth, but like very smart and kind of sarcastic girl, and I played the dumb jock. All right, then, cool. As Kevin Thompson, and they named him Thompson after me.
Nice.
And then that kind of started this crazy career of voiceovers that I've been blessed to do. And I got that, and then kind of one thing led to another, and I did a bunch of anime stuff like Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh, and I did a version of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I did G.I. Joe Sigma 6. Recently, I've done a version of the Transformers show. I got to do Megatron on that. And so I did a lot of animation, and kind of character voices were always my thing. And then my agent called one day and said, would you like to do an audiobook? And I kind of was not really interested, because I was always the guy in school that didn't really finish the book and kind of just rented the movie and got the clip notes and did the book report on that. And I wasn't like someone who read for fun or enjoyed reading. I was like, so I was trying to kind of talk my agent out of it. It's like, no, not really. It's not really something I'd be interested in. She was like, well, what about a Star Wars book? And I was like, whoa, hold on. Yes. So then I auditioned for that, and I think I got hired because I could do character voices and I could emulate some of the characters from the films. But then I had to learn how to do an audiobook. But then that's been like 10 years ago now, and I've done getting up close to 100. I think it's like 80 or 90 Star Wars books now at this point. It's been really amazing, and honestly, like a huge answered prayer for me, just because like I grew up a huge Star Wars fan, and to be able to work on this franchise and be a small part of it is just a huge deal for me, and I'm grateful every day because of it. So, and I'm married, and I have 2 teenage boys, and one's about to go to college, and I'm very sad about it.
Wow.
Are they Star Wars fans also?
They are. Marvel's more their thing. Like Marvel is their Star Wars, but they do, like, we watch all the cartoons and shows together, and we went over that. But yeah.
Well, good. No, that's a great, and we'll go deeper into it. But one of the things that I wanted to ask you, well, first of all, with the Transformers, maybe my timeline's wrong or anything like that, but was F.J. DeSanto, was he involved with anything to do with that? Do you know that name from? He's always on Rebel Force Radio, but I could have sworn he did a lot of work with the Transformers. So
that was a show where I hardly met any of the other actors, and we were just kind of passing ships in the lobby. So the name sounds vaguely familiar, but I don't think I know.
I was just throwing it out there because I thought of that. But you hit on some great things. G.I. Joe, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Looks like you did Bizarro on DC Super Friends.
Oh, you did your research.
Come on. That's what I'm here for. Yeah. But so you've done books, video games, movies, things like that. But did I read you did something on Fresh Prince of Bel-Air? Okay. Were you a stand-in or something on that show?
That one's not true.
Okay, I was reading that. I was like, how is this match up with all the rest of that
Don't
stuff?
you remember me and Carlton? Like,
Right.
Yeah, right.
You originated the Carlton.
yeah, exactly. Where do you think you got that from? No. So, okay, this is a thorn in my side. Like, basically, in order to edit your IMDb page, you have to pay a subscription fee in order to do it. And I just was like, no, I'm not going to pay for that. You know, so producers and whoever enter all the information, and somebody put that on my page. They also put that I was born in 1970, but I was actually born in 1975. And so there's a few credits on there that are not accurate, and I'm too cheap to pay for the subscription to erase it.
Hey, if nothing else, I mean, somebody does look at that like me, and I'm reading through, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. And then I was like, Fresh Prince of Bel Air. I was like, how does that work with the rest of this stuff? Yeah. So obviously, before we get into, because I definitely want to learn more about the process. For me, it's how do you work on the voices? How do you all that stuff? And again, my son's in that, and he's friends with Frank Caliendo, the impressionist and all that. So
Yeah.
Listening to you do those quick voices, I was like, man, I'm thrown right into a talk with Caliendo here. But we're going to hit on all that. But you're a Star Wars fan, right? I mean, you like Star Wars. One of the things before we get to all you is I want to knock some things out. One of the things is, are you watching Bad Batch? Have you been watching the Bad Batch?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm loving it.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you've seen the most recent one, Battle Scars, then?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So I'll just go around the room. You know, we usually talk about it, everything like that. Battle Scars came out. Obviously, we're doing this between this one and the next one. What did you guys think across the board? For me, we talked about it in a recent show. The first episode came out with that long 70-minute episode, and it hit you, right? It got you all the big points. And then since then, it's been finding its groove, right? Where are we going to do? This one brought me right back. This one brought me right back with Rex. It brought me back with the chips getting taken out. It brought me back with Wrecker turning, all that kind of stuff. But I want to hear from you guys. So Nick, I'll start with you. We'll go to Brent, and then we'll go to Mark. But thoughts real quick on Battle Scars and the Bad Batch.
You know what? I tweeted out after watching it in the morning, a GIF or a GIF, however you say it, of some random dude saying, "This is what I'm here for." Literally, I loved it, and I loved it similar to what you're talking about, where it does transport you back to the last 4 episodes of season 7, of Clone Wars, where they're walking through this destroyed, Venator class Star Destroyer. And he's asking him these questions. And what's so fun for me is, like, if you're this is why I like Bad Batch. If you're a casual Star Wars fan, like, it's really good. And if you're like into everything and you listen to the books, and I say listen on purpose, but if you listen to the books, and you do all that stuff, there's little things that stick out, right? So Rex is talking with the Bad Batch, and they're like, what was this process like for you? And he's dropping little things, like, very veiled, that you're like, man, remember how awesome season 7 was? That was cool. And so for me, it was like being in a candy shop almost. Everything from the Dianoga in the pit, to just all of it. Sorry, Brent, you did it to me last week, so I got to get to
No,
that.
I'm going to argue with you a minute.
Yeah.
Well, no, I didn't want to. Is it a Dianoga, or is it that, like, squid-like thing from Mandalorian? I thought it was. So when the one that swallowed Baby Grogu, that was in the Quarren ship on season 2 of The Mandalorian, when Bo-Katan comes in and saves the day, and the one girl goes, like, Din Djarin couldn't swim, but the one girl Mandalorian
Oscar
could.
Reeves.
Yeah. So all right. So everybody knows where I'm, like, the world that I'm in. That looked like the same to me. It looked like the same thing. It didn't look like a Dianoga.
Let me ask you, when have you ever seen a Dianoga in the movies ever? You know what I'm saying? Like, you saw the eyeball
around.
Look, and you see the eyeball. Why couldn't he have an eyeball somewhere?
Right. He could have had an eyeball, but I didn't.
Compactor.
And Brent, you went towards that. I went right to it being a Rathar at first. I thought it was a Rathar from The Force Awakens. I was like, is that? And then I had the closed caption going on, and underneath it said Dianoga grabs Rex.
Whoa, okay.
And I was like,
Steve, cheater. First of all, cheater.
Nope.
Second,
resourceful is what he is.
Second, I thought it was going to be a Dianoga, but then when it came up out of the water, I thought it was the Mandalorian season 2 monster.
Yeah, I got you. I got
Subtitles, Brent. Lesson learned.
Then he cheat. I guess you got to cheat and put the subtitles on.
you. When you host a podcast, it's best for you to have the subtitles on. So
I didn't want to cut. Nick, do you want anything
ahead,
else?
Nick,
I didn't
go
mean to
ahead.
cut you off.
No. It was amazing.
Go ahead, Brent.
So the only things I'll add, the points that I'll add, and I was hoping Nick wouldn't steal these points, were for the same reasons you said they were throwing in season 7. They also threw in the planet from Fallen Order, from Jedi Fallen Order, right? So if you're playing the video games, you have if your entry point was the video game, now you have another piece that's like, oh, this is the opening world where they were taking all these things apart. And I also feel like towards the end that they're leading towards the Empire this wound, because they did their whole clone thing and then they said, let the Empire know. And so I feel like we're going to get and see Crosshairs come back in, because I wanted that last episode.
We do hope for that. Mark, any initial thoughts for you on Bad Batch, with whether it's the whole series, since we haven't spoke with you about it, or just this episode and some of the things that it's hitting the right way for you, or maybe the wrong way for you?
Yeah, no, I'm really enjoying it. Like I think I'm like you in that the premiere episode was probably my favorite, and I loved seeing Kanan in there and all that stuff, and that was amazing. And I think it's been fun getting to know them, and I loved over the last few episodes the tension they were building with Wrecker, because like anytime he like rubbed his head or was like or like a headache or hit his head, I was like, is this it? Is this when it's gonna happen? Like, oh no. And so I thought that was really well played, because then like after a couple episodes of that tension building and building and building, and then when the music like goes and then he grabs his neck, I was like, oh no. And then because I thought they did such a masterful job of him and Omega having the cross promotional popcorn that you can get Galaxy's Edge at the Mantel Mix.
Do they have that at Galaxy's Edge now?
I don't know if they call it Mantel Mix. I think they call it
that's awesome,
Outpost Mix or something. But
they might call it Mantel Mix from here forward.
Yeah.
But so anyway, I thought all that was great, and all I'm dreaming of now is like if we got Rex, we got to get Ahsoka. Like I feel like there's whether it's in a future season or a finale or something, I feel like that would be, especially with that whole like, if you ever need me, like call me. It's like, oh please. So I'd be excited to see that, or Cal Kestis. Like I would love to see a younger Cal Kestis show up, and that's kind of the fun of this show is seeing like these little cameos pop in, and like where were they during this period, and so I'm really digging it. I really like it, and D. Bradley Baker is just so ridiculously talented and amazing, and how he's able to bring nuance to each of those characters so that they sound completely distinct is just he is so awesome, and I really love him.
Well, we are big D. Bradley Baker fans here because of the Clone Wars, because of Rebels, because of now this show, and to think, like you said, that there's probably been 100 clones that he's had to actually voice, and he's got a small variation on each one of them. So it's absolutely fabulous. I think one of the things that stood out to me was well played on showing the tradition of getting the Mantel Mix and that brotherly, sisterly kind of love that those two had for each other, and how they just approach the entire world and galaxy as just, we're just here to have fun and be together and keep it simple. Mm-hmm. And to see that nice little brother sister scene then turned to almost to a horror movie scene, to where it was, the music is pounding and everyone's nervous, and that typical thing of moving this, but she's over there. And I thought that was just really well done, and I thought it was well played from beginning to end. Brent and I talked about it last week, maybe, when is this going to happen? and I was like, hey, I want to see Wrecker go bad for a little while. And so I got the bell rung on that, because he did go bad, and he was a pretty cool character like that. Any other things that stood out to you? Go ahead, Brent.
Yeah, so I thought it was going to get played out long and draw that. I thought they were going to try to slow play that all the way through. I was wrong, because we were talking about it, and in the next episode, they pulled it shit from some of the guys. I like the fact that they did the Mantel Mix, or the Mandel Mix, or whatever it was, because it also illustrates that there's more time and there's more jobs. That's it's a way to it was a way to illustrate the passage of time, that these people are doing a lot more than just like the 4 or 5 shows. We're catching them at a snapshot, but they obviously had done enough of these to create that tradition and also build up the bill that was a pretty sizable bill that they had to pay off with Sid, right? So either way, but basically it was a way to illustrate that, okay, these people, like, they're becoming the family, right? That's one of the things that we had a show on one time about Rebels and the theme of Rebels, and I think that's one thing that that gets hit on very well within each of the different Star Wars trilogies, except for the one that kind of misses. But the building of family,
nameless, right?
Yes,
the building of family. No, but
yeah.
But I guess that building of family, that building of camaraderie, that building of time, and that illustration that time does pass helps you to understand that these people are growing stronger and those bonds are tighter.
Agreed.
Joe, I saw you tweet something this last week. You know, I don't remember who it was back and forth, so I apologize if you're listening to this and you tweeted this back and whatever, you get it. Somebody said, do you think that's the last we see Rex in this season now?
I remember that.
And I saw you responded to it. Do you still believe that this is the last we'll see / hear of Rex in this season? It kind of feels to me that way.
I wouldn't be surprised if we see him one more time, because this was episode 7. There's 16 episodes. I wouldn't be surprised if we see him one more time right at the end. Something's going to have to bring everything together, and he's going to be needed, or they're going to call him, or he's going to call them. But I don't think he's going to be a regular. I don't think he's going to be a big part of the show. He's going to be that guest star that pops up, you know. So that's my thought. Do you have a different thought, Mark?
Well, no, just have they announced if this is going to be a multi-season show, or is this like a
great question?
They have
I don't
not.
think so.
That's what everybody's kind of up in the air on, because when you have Rebels, you got 4 seasons. When you got Clone Wars, you've got 7 seasons. Here you have this, but from everything I've heard, no one's made an announcement, hey, we're going to season 2.
Right.
Go ahead, Brent.
So the way he left the episode kind of made it feel almost like you're not going to see him, because he kind of faded off into the mist, right? So as he's walking out, if I remember correctly, and again, it's been a couple days, but it was kind of this quiet walk off into a misty, foggy area as he takes off. So there almost is that finality, that symbolism of like, hey, I'm disappearing into the ether unless you need me again.
Yeah.
Right.
It's kind of like, and to mix our space genres here, it's like if you ever watch Deep Space Nine, whenever Picard showed up at the beginning, you're like, we're probably not going to see you again because you're off doing. We saw you once, and that's cool, but you're definitely not coming back. You got problems to solve and things to do.
So I will say this, looking at it, Brent, you mentioned it, the Scrappers Guild. Obviously, they've reached out to the Empire. Well, I'm hoping it does bring Crosshair back. I think now that they've seen that they can get rid of the chips, I think now Tech is going to work on how do I get back to Crosshair for that. And just a side note, and I'll let you guys finish up talking about this episode, but being that it's Rhea Perlman and it's in a bar and the same people, the Hammerhead and the Weequay are in there every time, does it not feel like it's the Space Cheers? I mean,
I did not even put together that she was at the bar. That's great. That's so good.
Oh yeah,
and it's like Cliff, and it was basically like Cliff and Norm when they were betting on what's her name with the bow, the episode before. It was it was almost like a Cliff Norm back and forth about somebody betting on a dart game at the at Cheers. You're right. It is kind of like Space Cheers.
That's brilliant.
Our title of this week's show might be special guest Marc Thompson, and we talk about Space Cheers. So again, I just threw those out there. Any other closing thoughts or thoughts that you have about? I'll start back with you, Mark, because we started the other way before. But you know, who's he going to meet at the rendezvous, right? Who's Rex talking to in at the end and all that kind of stuff. But Mark, any closing thoughts on Bad Batch, this episode, this number 7?
No, I really loved it, and it, like, I guess my hopes for where the story goes from here is I would love to see them, now that they know how to get the chips out. Like, I would love for the show to become about them freeing other clones and like trying to go around and I'd love to see what happened to Cody. Like, it'd be cool to like, they can like find him and help him, or like. But I think that would be a cool dynamic of them going around trying to save their brothers, and I think that'd be neat.
I do too. I like that. And obviously Wolf and Gregor, we know, end up in Rebels.
Yeah,
So
right.
maybe Rex is going to do that for them, or maybe the Bad Batch will help. So
Right.
good call. I would like to see that. Brent or Nick, any more closing thoughts or last minute? Go ahead, Nick.
I guess I just want to continue to see them get back to the central, like it from what I can gather, and again, it feels like we've done a lot in the show so far, but Omega, or as Mark so eloquently put, Omega, right? Like it's we're trying to discover what's so special about her and why did they come back and why did they, rescue her. And for me, I would love to see some more glimpses. I know maybe I'm hoping because it's episode 8, we're at the halfway point. Maybe we'll veer a little bit more back towards that main story arc.
Yeah.
But at the same point, I'm very hopeful about where this is going. I have loved it to this point. And I am a post Revenge of the Sith,
Mm-hmm.
pre A New Hope guy. Like that's my time period. So
Wow.
That's good. Brent, any closing thoughts on Bad Batch this week?
I'm along for the ride, and I just want to see what else they try to pepper in. Do they pull in some EU stuff? Do they pull in who knows what they pull in, because it's crazy how they do it. And it's worth watching, and the little Easter eggs that come up each episode, trying to identify them. I feel like that was one of the strengths of Mandalorian too. But no, I'm along for the ride. I like it. It's not my time frame. My
Mhm.
time frame is post it's later on in this time frame.
It's
So
Rebels, Rogue One.
It's Rebels. It's the
Yeah.
building of the Rebels, not so much the clone side. I'm more towards the building of the rebellion side. But
Okay. Well, I tell you what, speaking of EU, expanded universe stuff, we're going to get into more with Mark, but I did write a question to Mark Newbold from StarWars.com, who runs Fantha Tracks and Making Tracks, the podcast. And I asked him, do you think Mara Jade will make an appearance back into, whether it's animated or live action, in that post Return of the Jedi mix that we're seeing right now? And he and his guest host just had it on their podcast, and they talked about it, and they were like, "That, you kidding me? That's what we want to see. We want Mara to be sprinkled back in there." Mark, I know you'll talk about this. You had some involvement in this Mara Jade, correct? I mean, that's part of your bread and butter right there.
Yeah. I got to do Mara and a bunch of those characters in Fate of the Jedi and Legacy of the Force, those 2 series, and it was a lot of fun, and it was definitely a great dynamic. I guess my question / concern would be that if you bring Mara Jade back, do we get to see her with Luke or not? Because if it's like with Thrawn, where you bring Thrawn back in a totally different time period, and it felt like you got to still experience the essence of Thrawn, although it still would have been cool. And maybe they can still do it now because of the space whales, and maybe they could pick up where they left off and redo Heir of the Empire, in this Mandalorian time slot. But to me, it would be hard to do Mara without doing a younger Luke. So I would be totally on board. But would you do CGI Luke? Would you do Sebastian Stan? Would it be an animated series? There's ways you could do it. But I think that would be a pretty crucial element, because that's so much of why people, I think, like her, is their relationship. So I don't know if you could do her justice without having that relationship.
That is a great, that's $1 million question right there. You're right. So
in this Bad Batch timeline, right? If we're going Bad Batch timeline, wasn't she the hand of the Emperor right around now as well? So you could introduce her if you're gonna go back and tie in the Emperor, and if you keep it in the Bad Batch timeline, I don't know when she becomes. I don't know.
Yeah, she's more Empire Return of the Jedi and Mandalorian time frame. I think she'd be a little bit young for the Bad Batch to be the Emperor.
I think you're right, because Luke is still young. He's still an infant, while Bad Batch is happening.
Well, all of these timelines.
I'll just throw a couple other things, because I want to spend the rest of the show peppering Mark with questions and learning about all this, but Ewan McGregor, sneak photos of him coming out as Obi-Wan. Pretty cool. Mark, I see with the beard. I'm guessing you've got an affection for Mr. Obi-Wan. Thoughts on seeing those snuck photos?
Should I look them up right now? I didn't look at the photos yet.
It's just him coming in and out of the stage with like a robe on.
They were wearing hairdressers gowns over the top of their as they were walking to crash services or their trailers in between shoots or in between their time. And it was like a actual costume. Say that again.
Do you see his actual costume?
You see like the leather boots, and you see like the wrist. You see like the robes around his wrist. I mean, he's truly covered. He's truly covered up. But the other pictures that came out with it, you like the officers, the Imperial were wearing like a deep green emerald officer's uniform, and they were like flaunting their uniforms. The ones that were like dressed up in costume as the officers, they were like a green Empire and there was one stormtrooper without a helmet on, but was in full stormtrooper garb. I don't know what kind of helmet. Like, obviously, I think they might have left the helmet on purpose because there's probably some tweak to the helmets because every little person has a spin. It's kind of like the Batman uniform. The stormtrooper helmets have a little spin to them, so they probably wouldn't let him leave the soundstage with the helmet on. But because the rest of the armor looks about the exact same as a stormtrooper.
Oh wow!
But yeah. I mean, he was really covered.
What was his hair like? Was it gray at all, or was it just brown and
very
long? Or
it's
like...
very I'm
very
gonna
similar.
point at you right now, but it's very similar to you from the pictures that I saw.
Watch us on YouTube at Rule the Galaxy.
That's right. Yeah. So do you do some cosplay, by the way, Mark? I mean, because you got the look going on for a Jedi right now.
Yeah, I do actually. I'm a part of the Rebel Legion, and
Nice.
My costume was not good enough to be officially Obi-Wan Kenobi, so I'm a generic Jedi, but I call myself Obi Mark, and I
like that.
I'm Obi-Wan Kenobi's fat cousin. So
That's awesome.
So would you call that your favorite character then? I mean, are you an Obi-Wan guy? Like, I'll just let you in on the secrets. Our fearless host, he says he's an Obi-Wan fan, which he is. He'll also try to dog on R2 because he has an entire 6-shelf display of R2 stuff. He tries to say he's not an R2 lover, but R2 and Obi-Wan are probably 1-2 for him.
And Rex.
I know Rex is there too, but like,
Yeah.
let's be honest, Obi and R2 were pretty high up there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fair.
yeah, my number one is Yoda, and then my number two is Obi-Wan. I like Obi-Wan. It's just it's the one I could pull off the closest without a lot of makeup and special effects. But
Hard to cosplay Yoda. Definitely.
yeah.
Well, good. Yeah, I was excited. I mean, I'm looking forward to that show completely. To go on another side angle, and I know Brent's very excited about this show. It looks like Saw Gerrera and Krennic are both in for Andor.
Yeah.
I think that's great.
This is my timeline. Like, this is the timeline. Like, this is the early, like, so you see in Rebels, there's this one cell, and then I think by season 3, they finally come together to create a base of other Rebel cells. Like, so they kind of slowly build to that, because you know that there's other cells going on out there. And this is the chance to see what Cassian Andor does. This is a way to pull in Saw Gerrera. I'm so excited to see that time, because that timeline is a timeline that really is kind of piqued my interest the hardest.
But now I haven't watched Rogue One in a while. Like I thought when Cassian gets arrested, that was like the first time he met Saw. Am I remembering it wrong? Or like,
I believe so.
That they knew
They don't actually interact.
No, they don't. He Jen Erso is the only one that sees Saw.
They take her out of the prison cell and take him. Yeah. So they don't actually.
But does he ever indicate that he knew him or knew of him or were okay?
From what I remember,
question.
he doesn't. All he says is like, "Jin, you can get us a seat at the table." I don't think there's any specifics of like, "Yeah, I know him," or "I've seen him," or "I saw him," but something to the like. I will say this now, thinking about it, when you watch back in there on Jeddah, he is very in tune to like what's going on in the city. Remember, he says the whole thing of like the city's getting ready to blow. Like he is like very, which makes me infer that he's been there before.
Okay,
he's seen. Maybe he's
watched it because I can't remember. I would love to see them interact. But I'm trying to remember if he knew him or not. So, but that's cool.
Go ahead, Brent.
I feel from the sizzle reel, like one of the things, I don't think I was that set onto it until they said a couple things in that sizzle reel and my brain stuck on it. They said that there's over 200 named characters that will make an appearance in the 12 shows. Right. That blew me away because now, so what I'm getting at is I believe that they may never interact in this show as well, but it's about the fact that like maybe
Parallel
Dodonna,
timelines.
Dodonna or
Well, that'd be great.
Martha or Bail Organa is sending them each different sect out to do something different. But one of the things that there's just so many possibilities with that. Over 200, like one of the guys said it, so many costumes, the sets are huge. They have I think it's a full 12 episode season and 200 named characters in that. And to me, that's massive in scope.
And they actually were getting complaints in England for how much space they were taking up in filming. Like the sets, they built a ton of sets for Andor in England.
Oh, that's awesome.
So, yeah. No, I agree. I agree.
2022, or we're not getting that this year, are we?
I don't think so.
I think we get in 2022.
Yeah.
I think that and Mando season 3 are both 2022, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Well, we get Boba Fett in
Yeah.
December, right?
Right, December. And I was thinking, wasn't Mando? I thought Mando 2 was set to, because I think what is Boba 4 or 6 episodes? It's not a long.
Oh, really?
I don't think it's a long set. Like from what I've seen, it was just a short. And for me, I think it's also, this is just me thinking, okay, so we've made this movie, or we had this Boba Fett movie in the works. Let's just pull that off the shelf, retool it a little bit, and reshoot it because it's already there. So now we have the interest. Let's do it now because we did it before, and let's turn it in. Like, let's take what we were going to make an hour and a half long movie and expand it a little bit just to make it like a 4 to 6 episode arc of.
Well, I don't know about you, Mark, but Nick and Brent, myself, we are consumers of Star Wars, and we'll take it all in, and we'll reserve judgment and say, okay, this worked for me, that didn't work for me, whatever. But it's all Star Wars, and so Brent's excited for Andor. I am as well, but I think that's the one he's leaning towards. I'm excited for the Kenobi series. Nick, I don't know out of all of these which one you're leaning towards the most, but
Yes.
Is there one on that list of 11 Disney Plus shows that
You know what? There were two. Oh, sorry, you're not
Go
talking
ahead.
to me.
No,
You're
go
talking
ahead,
Mark.
Nick.
Sorry,
Hit me with your two.
There were two. Acolyte, because I have a affinity
Plagueis.
for. Yeah, I have an affinity for the dark side. It's just a thing. And Visions, which I'm excited about. An anime Star Wars.
Yeah.
Which sounds really, really cool to me. I could definitely get down with that.
Yeah.
I like it. How about you, Mark? Any of them that stood out to you the most?
I mean, I've wanted more Obi-Wan probably the longest. So I guess Obi-Wan for me is the one that I'll be most excited about. But it's funny because like with Mandalorian, I was kind of like you were saying, like, yes, like anything Star Wars I'm excited about. So I was definitely going to be checking out Mandalorian just because it's Star Wars, but I didn't expect to love it as much as I do, because like the bounty hunters are interesting to me, but it's not like I was like, how are they going to make a whole show about bounty hunters? Like, oh, this is going to be weird, and is it going to feel like Star Wars? But like, it feels so much like Star Wars, and just the storytelling and the characters and the family that they've built was not what I would have expected from a show about bounty hunters, so I've now I'm like really pumped for more Mando, and I got to know what happens to Grogu, and then I'm obviously super excited about Ahsoka just because I have a connection to Thrawn, and it stands to reason that we might see Thrawn in an Ahsoka show, so I would be really pumped about that. And then that makes me excited because if we get Thrawn, I think we have to see Ezra. And then, that's very exciting. And so, it's more probably yes is the answer. But Obi-Wan's number one, and then everything else after that is going to be close second. So
Good. Well, Nick or Brent, did you guys have any other topics you wanted? Because I really wanted to, because we have our special guest, I kind of wanted to go through and just talk to and learn how this all works. Because for me, I'm sitting there thinking, okay, I'm a consumer, and I can sit there and take all these books in. Again, like I said, driving, whatever, doing work and typing away and having that in my ears. But the process has got to be huge, and the scale of things. So, are there other things you guys want to hit before we just start talking about the books and the audiobooks and the other work that Mark's done? No, you're good.
Nothing more important than this.
Okay. All right. Mark, I'll start. We'll just start lobbing you questions. If you don't mind, this is like the dating game, except we're not trying to date you. We're just going to start throwing questions and you be prepared here. So my first question is, you've done all these Star Wars audiobooks, ranging from expanded universe that no longer exists in canon to brand new things related to The Last Jedi and the Rise of Skywalker and things like that. All and across that expanse, are there certain books and certain characters that you're most attached to?
Oh, wow. I mean, it's hard to answer just because there's something I love about all of them.
Mhm.
And I feel so lucky to do any of them. I think I had a real connection to Dark Disciple. It was a story with Asajj Ventress and Quinlan Vos.
One of our favorites.
It's just so well written, and like that was the first time recording the audiobooks where I got like a little choked up in the booth, and I got a little misty-eyed in the booth. So, and I kind of lost myself in the moment on that one, and so
Nice.
I feel like a really cool connection to that one. I have a deep connection to we did the 25th anniversary of Heir to the Empire, and that one's just I really enjoyed that one because just on a personal note, because I think I mentioned before we started recording that growing up I wasn't much of a reader, like or maybe I did mention that when we were talking about my background. So I wasn't much of a reader, but the one time I actually on my own bought a book was when Heir of the Empire came out, because back then after Return of the Jedi you had the Ewok specials, and then that's it. There's like what happens, so I bought that book and I started it, but then the teenager and the lazy guy in me never got around to finishing it because I just I didn't really read that much. So I started that book, never finished it, and then flash forward to 25 years later, I get hired to like read it, like I get paid to actually read it. It's like, oh, this thing was actually really good. I'm glad to find out what happened. So that's just a weird like full circle moment connection for me. And then lately, I'm really loving the High Republic books. Like I'm a huge Jedi fan. Like the Jedi are what make me a huge fan of Star Wars, and I just feel like what they're doing in the High Republic is so true to the spirit of the Jedi, and I feel like you're getting such deep layers of the Force and understanding of the Force and how different people see the Force, and they're really doing some amazing world building and characters that we've never met before. And so for some of the books we've always known like what happens to these characters in the beginning or what happens in the end, and we're finding out the middle story. But this is like so interesting because you're getting to know them from the beginning and you have no idea where it's going, and the story's just going in all these crazy places. And so I'm really loving the High Republic right now.
Good. So you mentioned the books, the characters. Are there ones you like to do the voices of? Like, do you put yourself into that person's persona the most?
Ooh, that's a good question. Well, I mean, I love doing Yoda just because Yoda's my favorite Star Wars character. So like, anytime I get to be like, do or do not, there is no try. I'm like, ooh, so, but I guess just I'm a product of growing up on Star Wars, but I guess like Luke has always resonated with me just because I like the idea of someone who's idealistic and really trying to do the right thing. And I really connected a lot with him in the Legacy of the Force books and the Fate of the Jedi books, and just the struggle of trying to know how to rebuild the Order and do what's right. And I really connected with him.
Sure. Brent, go ahead.
So this is more about the process of you reading and recording. So I mentioned to the guys beforehand There is something called competitive speech, the National Forensics Leagues. And basically, for those that don't know, is you could take absolutely any piece of literature and you could turn it into something that is to get laughter, or you can turn it into something that is to get drama. And you are reading all characters, but you're giving that piece of literature life. You're giving that piece of text life, and somebody's watching it, and then you get judged based upon how well you do that. So it's basically competitive voice acting, right? I mean, so Mark, you've done that, right?
Yeah, we mentioned that before we started recording, and I was blown away because I feel like not many people know about that, but yeah, that was a huge part of my high school journey, and it definitely was the seeds to the work I do now. Like it was absolutely that, where you had to, like, I did humorous interpretation and dramatic interpretation, and I did a couple competitions with duo where you have a partner, scene partner or whatever. But that, and I did this, Miss Ham was my speech coach for Brent, and Miss Hofstetter was my drama teacher and a director in my high school plays. And she cast me in this two-man show called Greater Tuna. And it was like, two actors do all these characters in this Texas town. And so it was those experiences that got me used to trying to figure out how to make characters sound distinct and different, and play around with accent work and different attitudes and things like that. So that definitely was kind of the building blocks that led me to be able to do a lot of the animation and audiobooks that I do now.
So when you're in the booth recording, are you recording one character at a time, or are you doing character pops? For those that don't know, character pops is like the technique or the term when you go from one character to the next. So are you reading straight from a script and straight from the book, or do you do like one character at a time, get some direction on it, and then you read the next character? Or are you doing your pops like you're doing a humorous interpretation or dramatic interpretation type thing? Like, so how do you act when you're actually recording?
Like when we're recording, we do the character pops. Like and that's mainly like, there's a part of me that would prefer to do each character voice, because then I feel like I would get locked into the character and it would be super consistent, but it would be an editing nightmare. And then a lot of times you could, because of how long these productions are, it would be very easy to lose the thread of the conversation, or kind of like what you're responding to, because you'd be so far apart from each of those conversations. But yeah, like I'll read and then I have to kind of switch on the fly. So some people, there's a thing called punch recording. And what that is you'll record, and if you make a mistake, you hit pause, and then the program will rewind a couple of seconds. It'll play what came right before, and then you jump back in. And I've only done that a handful of times, and I hated it. It's just like,
I hate it, and I've never done it.
So paranoid about, is this what I'm supposed to jump in? And well, I better not mess up again, because I gotta like rewind the tape again, and so it's just, it adds all this pressure. And I just personally do not like punch recording, and kind of don't do it anymore. But for the Star Wars books, they're very kind, and they just hit record and let it roll. And then an editor comes in, and I get to do it as many times as I need to get it out right without fumbling, or it makes sure that it's the right character saying the right line, and then they go back and edit it and make me sound like I know what I'm doing.
Go ahead, Nick.
Well, first, Mark, this is just a treat getting to ask you these questions. I real short, I got into Star Wars. My dad showed me Star Wars when I was a prequel kid, right? Like loved the prequels, went and saw them in theaters. But then when the prequels ended in 2005, that was it, right? Like there's no more Star Wars. And so I consumed just about every Star Wars piece you could get in our local library, including, audiobooks would come later. But for me, I can't tell you it's funny saying this. I can't tell you the amount of hours I've listened to you talk, which is kind of funny, right? But it's just very true, right? And so I just went back through the Aftermath trilogy, right? Oh. And just thinking how long that went. And so to be actually able to meet you, it's actually super fun. My big question for you tonight was Thrawn, right? Mm-hmm. So it easily makes my Mount Rushmore of favorite characters. I know when I was growing up, I read the books. And then when I was in college, I listened to the 20th anniversary one that you did on there. And that was the first time that I had actually ever heard Thrawn, like the voice of Thrawn before. And I was immediately sucked in, pulled in it. So I wonder if you just tell us a little bit about that process of getting to work on the 20th anniversary. I know they did a cassette version of it way back, and then they made it digital, whatever. How did you come up with that voice? Did you come up with that voice? Did you just tell me about that process of working Thrawn and all that?
Yeah, it was really cool. So initially, like usually what happens is I'll read the book, and then based on my first impression from the book, I try to come up with ideas of what I think the voice should be. And then I'll record those ideas on my iPhone. And then when I get in the booth, I'll play a sample and listen to it and then go from there. And the director of these, his name is Kevin Thompson, which is funny because I played a cartoon character named Kevin Thompson, but it's Kevin has directed a majority of these, and he'll kind of say yes or no, or let's adjust it like this, or and he's really good at kind of finding, like looking at the big picture and kind of figuring out how are all these pieces going to go together. So actually, when we first did Thrawn, I latched on to the idea that here is this chiss in the middle of the Empire, and the Empire is very xenophobic, and they're kind of prejudiced against alien races, and so I wanted to highlight that he was different from the rest of the Empire. So we actually recorded, I want to say like the first 2 chapters, and I made Thrawn kind of have almost like a faint like German accent or something to try to distinguish him from all the British people from the Empire. And it was working okay. But then about when we got to around the 2nd chapter, Kevin was like, you know what? I hate to do this, but I really feel like what we should be focused on is the idea that Thrawn is almost like a Sherlock Holmes character. Like he's almost like, he's deducing things. He looks at the art, and Pelion is kind of like Watson, and so I think we should go back and redo it and kind of have him have that kind of baritone, almost like a Sherlock Holmes voice. So when we did the anniversary edition, that's kind of where we landed, and that's kind of what we did. And then it's funny because then when Disney bought the books, and they kind of said the expanded universe's legends, and then they decided to bring Thrawn back. First appeared on Rebels, and then Lars Mikkelsen is doing an amazing job portraying him on Rebels, and he has this really unique accent that's like, it's British, but it's also, I forget what country he's from. I want to say Dutch or something, but it's like it's a very unique accent. So then when we did the new Thrawn books, I've tried the best I can to emulate what Lars Mikkelsen is doing, and so it's a little different than what you would hear on the Heir of the Empire and that original trilogy anniversary edition that we did.
Wow, man, that's so cool. Thank you, Mark. I was so curious about, because so then going into, so what you're saying is like you have morphed this even more and more as the books have continued based off of what other people have done, and man, that's really cool.
Go ahead, Brent.
So what was your like pinch me, am I dead moment with this whole situation and scenario? Like, can you boil it down to one? Like, when were you like, pinch me, I'm dead? Like, am I really doing this?
I mean, there's been several, to be honest with you. Like, I think like
share a few of them. Share a few of them.
Well, so like I said, like when my agent first called and, do you want an audiobook? No. Do you want a Star Wars? Yes. Like I literally prayed. I was like, God, please, I would love to get this. Please let me get this. So then, and it was Legacy of the Force, and it was a 9-book series. So it wasn't
love
just
that series.
like, they want to do a whole thing. So when they said, yes, you got it, and you're going to do all 9 of these, that was like, oh, wow, that's awesome. He's got one there. So that was a like, oh, I can't believe this is happening. Oh my goodness. That was one. Another one was they were having Star Wars Celebration, the conventions. And so I was trying to figure out a way to go to Star Wars Celebration, and I went to their website and found their publicist, and people had started being very vocal and saying nice things about me in the reviews or whatever. So I screen captured like, 8 or 10 reviews, and I put this like formal presentation together. And I was like, hey, like, I know you've got like major actors and all these things, but if you're looking for content, and if there's a panel, I would love to, come if you'd be interested. And I sent this email, and then I was like, I know you don't know who I am, and I know, and I sent it out kind of as like a Hail Mary. It's like, well, maybe I'll get to, do something, or I could have a table there or something. And they wrote back, I was like, oh, we know who you are. And I was like, oh, wow. And like the Del Rey publisher, I guess, got CC'd on that. And then, so then they invited me out, and like I guess that was a pinch me moment, because then I started interacting with the fans, and like, there was like I was waiting in line for one of the panels, and somebody recognized me in line, like from the back of the CD jacket. Like, they were like, wait, are you, and then so like, that was like a weird moment. And then another one was just, I got to do the novelization of Force Awakens, and they recorded it a few months before the movie came out. So like, I knew about like Han Solo dying, and like, Rey being a Force user Jedi, and all this stuff like months before the movie came out. And I was like, so that was a definite like, wait, is this really happening? Is this, so I'm ridiculously lucky. And
those are great pinch me moments, and actually they tied into one of my questions, and you kind of hit it there. No matter if it's just a novel or if it's related to a movie, how long in advance do you usually get this information? And then once you do get it, how long does the process usually take for you to go through? I know if I sat and read one of these books, it would take me quite a while.
Yeah.
So how long in advance, whether it's for just a book or for a movie, and then how long does each process take?
Right. It used to be a lot tighter of a schedule, because they used to have to print the manuscript, mail it to me, and then I would have to like take notes and write on the paper, whatever. And now they do like PDFs, and they're like password protected PDFs and things like that. So so it used to be like I'd get them like maybe 2 or 3 weeks before we have to go in the booth. Now I feel like I've been getting them now more like closer to 4 weeks beforehand, or so I usually get 3 to 4 weeks before we have to be in the booth. So it's honestly a bit stressful, because I have other cartoon jobs and other jobs I'm doing during those few weeks. So I have to find the time to read these 400-page books, and then it's not just reading it. It's like I read it and I have to take notes about who's speaking and what kind of voice am I going to give them. So it definitely takes me along all those weeks to like, get ready. And then we get in the booth, and then I record it. And for me, it usually takes about 5, sometimes 6 days to record it. And that's like usually like 10 a.m. to like 5 or 6 p.m. And they let me out for like food and bathroom and stuff. But, otherwise, like read. And then after that, it takes them, I want to say 2 to 3 weeks because the Star Wars books are different than most audio books. Like the Star Wars books are really like audio movies. They're like they layer them with music from the films, original music, sound effects, soundscape, so like atmospheric stuff. And a lot of audiobooks, they don't have the budget to do that much audio production. But like Paul Goodrich and Kevin Thompson are artists and amazing at what they do. And they just, you could close your eyes and just what you're hearing, you can almost see the movie in your mind. And so they're really special in that way. So if you haven't checked it out, I recommend it just for that. But so it takes them a while to layer in all that stuff. And then they generally like to release them when the book releases. So I'd say we're recording about 2 months before the release date, and then it's a mad rush to the to the production sites and to get the CDs pressed and and the digital files set up formatted properly so they can be on Audible or iTunes and all the different stores. But yeah, so it's a pretty long process.
So how hard was it to keep the Force Awakens information secret? Like if I had that information, and I know my job, I understand the job and the career at this point that you're several years into this job and career.
Yeah.
But there's a part of me is I would have had to have told someone that I knew was a steel trap. So how hard is it to keep some of that detail secret?
It was really hard. The director knows what a big fan I am, and he actually called me and said, all right, now look, I'm gonna offer you something, but I need to know if you're gonna say yes to this before I make the offer, because he knew that I might not want to get spoiled. Like I might want to see this in theater.
Wow.
You've waited 20 years or whatever to between the last Star Wars film, and so he was like, do you want this? And I actually had to think about it, because I was like, well, wait, yeah, I'm not going to get to have that opening night experience. I'm not going to get to be surprised and all this. And I told my wife, I was like, should I do this? Because the opening night is not going to be the same, and it's going to be spoiled. And she looked at me and was like, are you crazy? Like, of course you should do this. It was like, and she was like, if you got cast in the film, you would say yes to that, right? And I was like, oh yeah, I guess I would. And she's like, yeah, do it. And so I was waiting, when I recorded it, they literally, normally I get sent the script. For that one, I had to go to their office. They locked me in a room. When I needed to go to the bathroom, I had to tell someone. They opened the door. They locked the door behind me so no one else could read the script. I go to the bathroom, they have to escort me back. And they disconnected all the computers from the internet, so I couldn't do anything. So it was insane. And I just when I got to, I know what I have to do, but I don't know if I have the strength to do it. I was literally crying in this room by myself. And I was so paranoid about letting anything leak out that I didn't tell anyone. I didn't tell my family, I didn't tell my friend, but opening night, it was still fun, because opening night, what I did is in those moments, instead of looking at the screen, I had one eye on the screen, but then I was kind of looking in the aisles to see what people's reactions were, because I knew when the big moments would be. And so that was kind of fun in that sense, to kind of see oh, what's your reaction to that? So it was a crazy experience.
Mark, did I miss it? Did you say the novelizations typically come out after the movies?
So for Force Awakens and I believe Rogue One, Jonathan Davis,
they came out at the same time, or right around the same time.
Not the same time. So that meant we had to record them months before the movie came out. But then Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker, I don't know if it was, I don't know the reason why, but they decided to release those after the films came out, and which was also kind of cool, because then they had supplementary material and deleted scenes that were kind of put in the books, and I think they were able to, the books are written around the same times that the movie's coming out, but I think there were fixes, like Rise of Skywalker, there were fixes coming in 3 weeks after we recorded and a week or two before they were going to release it, and they were still adding stuff that I think was kind of addressing some of the editing issues or the pace, and obviously a lot of the story beats had to change because Carrie passed away, and so anyway, but that so after Force Awakens and Rogue One, I think they decided to release the novelizations after the films came out, and I think part of that might be because the creative process on those films, things were changing pretty late in production, and I think the authors had to work on those books. They were working off of original drafts of the film, and then so much was changing in the editing of those films and some of the circumstances that were out of their control, that I think they had to wait longer to do the novelizations, because to adjust all the plot changes that were happening in the editing process is my guess.
So the question I had for you was, with that being the case, right? Everybody's going to go watch this movie, and they're going to see Daisy Ridley for the first time, maybe ever. And they're going to hear Daisy Ridley when they do this. You're recording this months before this happens. Mm-hmm. Are you, when you say, you said it earlier, well, I knew this character was, the Empire is xenophobic, and so I wanted to make him, I wanted to make, when I read, I read the first Thrawn Ascendancy book on hardback, and I'm hearing yours and Lars Mikkelsen's voice when I'm reading Thrawn. it's maybe a two-part question for you. The first time you're reading it through, are you already hearing voices of like, I think that's what they sound like, I think that's what they do? And two, how do you, because you did the novelization for all three of the sequels.
Yeah.
For the first Force Awakens one, are you just kind of shooting in the dark going, well, I think Rey might sound like this, and I think Kylo Ren might sound like this, and I don't know, I'm interested in that.
Like, so for the first question, yes, although sometimes what I've learned to do over the years now is to wait to give them a voice, because sometimes there's things that happen to them later in the story that change how I perceive their voice or change how I would hear them. So I lately I used to, like, as soon as I would get to a line of dialogue, record an idea right away. But now I've been reading the whole book first and then going back, because oftentimes, like, the idea I have for this character in chapter 1 is actually, this voice would actually be better for this new character that pops up in chapter 15. And I wouldn't have known that until I got to this point. So lately I've been kind of trying to reserve judgment, but sometimes ideas are popping in as I'm reading and I'll jot them down. But and then for The Force Awakens, it really was, I was petrified of that, because, you know, when I did Legacy of the Force and Fate of the Jedi, obviously I had all of the original films to go to for references, and everyone knows what those characters sound like. Right. And I knew that these characters would be just as iconic, so I didn't want to have, like, my characterization be so off base from what's in the film, because people are going to be like, that's not who they are. That's, you know. So I was literally like, I think I did have the advantage of, like, a teaser trailer had come out before we started recording. So I did have, like, the teaser of where, you know, the Falcon's going down, and, like, you know, little bits of, like, little snippets. And then I remember going to Toys R Us, and there was a talking Captain Phasma toy. And I remember, like, standing in the aisle of Toys R Us, like, recording this Captain Phasma action figure to know what Phasma was going to sound like. And then, you know, I was doing, like, weird things like that. And, like, I think other like, I would go on IMDb and see who was starring in the movie, and I would, like, look up either interviews with them or other films that they had been in to try to say, well, what's their natural voice sound like? Maybe that will help me. And we were begging Lucasfilm for samples, because I was so petrified, you know, and I was like, please just send us, you know, you must have them. Can you just let us listen? Or, you know, and, like, it wasn't until the first day of recording that they finally sent us over like a couple samples characters that we were asking for. And, like, I remember Balatik was, like, so different than what I imagined in my head, because he's, like, this Scottish guy. I was like, Han Solo, what are you doing here? You know, like, and, like, we were like, that's Balatik. I was like,
whoa,
all right, you know.
That wrong.
So it was weird, but, like, so it all came together. And at one point, Kevin had to, like, just say, all right, listen, you know, we can't be handcuffed to it sounding exactly how they're doing it in the film. We have to pretend as if this is our version of this story. It's like in the same way that different people tell the story of King Arthur, or, you know, or Sherlock Holmes, and, or, like, even the superhero movies like Superman and Batman, there's all these different iterations and takes on them. We just have to decide that this is our take on this story. And then, you know, the movie is the movie's take, and the books are going to be the book's take. And that was kind of a, okay, I'll let go of it and not be a perfectionist. And that freed us up a little bit to not feel like we had to, like, emulate everything exactly right.
Right. Wow.
So I had a question on A New Dawn. You did A New Dawn book.
Yeah.
Brent is
the Gilbert Gottfried voice.
Yeah, he wants to ask about that. I wanted to ask you about did you know in advance that Freddie Prinze Jr. was going to play Kanan? And did you use that for anything? Because I love the Rebels. Kanan's one of my favorite characters, but yes, we'll add in the Gilbert Gottfried voice. What was it like working on the New Dawn, and having really the first say in a whole new era of Star Wars right there? Because that book came out before the series, right? It was the introduction, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Actually, it was the first. It was the first licensed book that Disney released after they got it. That's why the tie-in of the name was so key to me. But go ahead.
Yeah, I can't remember if also there was a trailer for Rebels, or they released these little snippets of the characters, and I think those might have been out at that point. But I think I did. I think I somehow heard Kanan on something. I don't know if it was a trailer or something, but I think I was able to get a small sample and tried to lock in from there. Because it's Freddie Prinze Jr., but he's doing there's like a certain cadence that he had, and I do remember I think I was able to kind of hear something. I just remember what it was, but yeah, that was a fun book to do, and I ended up really loving Rebels. Like the whole cartoon was just awesome. So that was an honor to get to do that one.
So Brent had the question about the bad guy in that he was a weird, odd.
I mean, he sounded like Gilbert Gottfried. I'm sorry.
Can you throw some of that out there?
purpose
Do you
or
remember
not.
that voice you did for him on that?
I mean, I know what I was. He had like something. It was definitely a deliberate choice to make him sound
like that. And I do that a lot sometimes. Is I'll imagine, because the author will write the character a certain way, and I think there was something that Jonathan put in there about like his voice sounded like, you know, gravel or rocks or something. There was something that he described in the writing of that character that made me automatically think of Gilbert Gottfried. And it's like, all right, I'm gonna make him that, you know. And sometimes that's a deliberate choice where I'll imagine, like, if this were a live action film, who would play this character on film? And part of that's just it helps me. I had an acting teacher once that said the more specific you are, the more universal you are, and the more like the more true it will be. So it helps me sometimes to think of specific people when I'm coming up with character voices, because it helps me to remember them, and it also just makes them more distinct, because I feel like otherwise it just everything starts to blend together and sound the same. So sometimes that's just something I do to help me keep straight who's who.
So that was actually, I was hearing and picking up on the correct choice that you were making. You wanted to try to make that character have that kind of gravelly Gilbert Gottfried kind of. I loved it. Like this was not like a condemnation at all. I was just like, when I was listening to him, every time he came on, I just started laughing because it was so Gilbert Gottfried. I couldn't think of anything but like Up All Night with Gilbert Gottfried.
So my son does Nick Saban, Coach O from LSU. He does a lot more sports impersonations, but we'll be talking to him.
Oh, neat.
And he'll just flow right in. Like, he doesn't realize that he goes into the gestures and the voice.
Oh, wow.
And does that happen to you some with some of the characters you've done and some of the, whether it's cartoon characters or the books? Do you find yourself talking to your wife and then suddenly go into Thrawn? And just
and if so, what would that sound like?
Yeah. This dinner is quite artistically made. Yeah. Not so much with her, but like, you know, if I'm telling a story, I'll find myself, you know, morphing into different characters or things like that, you know. But yeah, it's fun. Like, yeah, I ping pong a lot. When I did kids stories, when I read my kids stories at night, I would do that.
I would love to have you as a father.
Yeah. Well, if you ask
just because of that bedtime story, it would be like the Princess Bride. It would be like the old guy sitting down to read the Princess Bride.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I mean they got annoyed with it pretty quick. Like they would be like, "Daddy, stop! Regular voice." And I was like, "All right."
So
that's great.
So I'm gonna go to another question, because we did mention the fact that, first of all, the Ninja Turtles fantastic, right? So and then my second love, which is the G.I. Joe. Did you work in a room with, because I know when you talk about going in the booth, and when you're doing the book, it's basically you and the director, or you and the producers. Do you work with a team, like, and which one do you find to be harder? Because with our love of that NFL and the National Forensics League, a lot of when you do duos, for you guys that don't know, you're paired up with a person, but you can't make eye contact with each other during the piece, because if you are, then you actually are acting, and you're not voice acting. You're not giving your because acting is a reaction. So do you find it easier to play off of somebody else when you're in the room, if you've had those experiences, or even in those environments, are you still solo?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like there's things I like about both. Like I think generally speaking, I'm mostly by myself in both animation and audiobooks. Ninja Turtles was the only one where I actually got to record with all the guys in the booth. And then in the audiobooks, it's mostly by myself. But there have been we've been doing lately some multicast productions, like Dr. Aphra, we did a multicast, and in Dooku we did a multicast. And that was fun, and we got to actually be with the other actors for Dooku. For Aphra, it was during COVID, so we had to do it in our bedrooms. But generally speaking, like I love working off of other actors. So those few times where I've been able to do it with other actors, I feel like you get a deeper, richer performance because you are able to react, and there's something that in the way that they're performing that inspires you, or in the way that they read it. But when you do it by yourself, there is an interesting challenge of having to kind of make the conversation flow and have all the different characters sound distinct, and that's always a fun challenge. And when I'm able to do it well, it's rewarding. And then sometimes I'm like, oh, just fast forward that chapter, or, like skip over that scene. I didn't like how I did that, but so it is rewarding when the finished product's there and they put all the sound effects and music in there, and it's fun to know that you did all that, but it's definitely a marathon and a lot of work to to make all the characters sound distinct and keep track of all their motivations and stuff throughout. So, but it's fun when it's completed, but the making of it can be really challenging sometimes.
Completely. Once a week we get 4 or 5 guys sitting here on a Zoom call, and it's challenging, right, guys? I mean, we step all over each other all the time. We don't know what the heck we're doing. So actually doing this with a script would be a mess.
Yeah.
Nick or Brent, any more questions? We've been going, we're almost at an hour and a half. I don't want to keep Mark any longer than we have, because this has been great so far. But any other questions? Before I get to you guys, I'll ask one that was in my head. If given the opportunity, I'm going to guess the answer is yes. Would you be jumping at a chance to be in a Star Wars animated series? Whether like Rebels, like Clone Wars, like Bad Batch, something in the future? Is that something you'd want to do?
100%. I would. That would be another answered prayer and just a dream come true. To work with Dave Filoni or any of those guys at Lucasfilm Animation, they're just some of my favorite Star Wars storytelling has come from them, and I would really, really love to be a part of that.
Good.
Mark, I don't know. I'll go for it.
Sorry. See, we step on each other's toes. I apologize, Nick, but I was going to ask the same question that I ask everyone. It's the routine question that comes up because of Tony Molinaro, and I have to ask, what is your favorite lightsaber hilt of the Star Wars universe? I'll give you a little background after you answer.
Oh, okay. I've heard Blade, but I've never heard hilt. That's cool. Oh, wow.
Well, what color would your blade be also? So hilt, and what color would your blade be?
I guess I'm stuck between Obi-Wan and what are we calling it now? The Skywalker saber, like the one that's been passed down.
Mm-hmm.
I guess Obi-Wan would win out because I have a couple sabers, and I have the Obi-Wan ones are the ones that I tend to gravitate towards. So just to give you some, and I cut you off on color, but just to give you some background,
at some point, Tony Molinaro, which is Joe's brother, was dogging on our friend Count Dooku's curved lightsaber, and he said no one would like a curved lightsaber. Yeah, they were both running around their room to try to find their sabers. Yeah. I'm letting you know that's what just happened.
Oh, so that's awesome. YouTube, is that the episode one or? That's nice.
The Obi-Wan Kenobi. That one's
really
cool.
Great.
So Tony Molinaro, one of our co-hosts, was dogging on the Count Dooku, and I wasn't on that episode, but I came on in my intro the next episode and was like, no, I like it. And so like we've gone and we've been asked to be on other podcasts, and if I have a guest, one of the questions I always like to have fun with, just so we can keep the joke going, is what's your favorite hilt? So I can bring up the fact that other people do like the Count Dooku hilt.
Oh, sorry to disappoint. Yeah.
No, you're fine. I didn't want to like set it up, but I had to. Yeah, he's got like he's a swashbuckler, man.
Yeah,
like he's
It's a civilized weapon.
right for a more civilized age.
Yeah.
That's right. Yes, he's got his pinky out sometimes when he does it.
Mark, I don't know if you can answer this, so I'm going to preface it with that. I know you mentioned that Dark Disciple emotionally got you, like it was the one that when you were reading, you were into. Would you classify that as your favorite book that you've done? Or if you had to pick a favorite, is there one that sticks out to you of, man, that was the best one I think we've, maybe not, and you can quantify it however you want, but best, favorite, whatever.
Yeah. I mean, it really is so hard because I really do love them all for different reasons. I mean, if I had to pick, it was definitely one of my favorites. I think now though, I really, really loved Light of the Jedi.
That was a great book.
That might be my new favorite. That and Rising Storm's about to come out, and Rising Storm is so good, and it's it's just some of the stuff that happens to like what I'm blown away by the High Republic books is like the log lines sound pretty uneventful. Like, if the log line for Light of the Jedi was an accident in space, like there's a terrible space crash, and it's like, really, a Star Wars fender bender? You're gonna make a book out of that? But like it ended up being like this amazing story. And then same thing with Rising Storm. The log line is like there's trouble at the fair. Like there's a big celebration and something happens at the fair, and it's like, really? But like it's like what they do is just so amazing, and what happens to these characters, and you just really end up caring for them, and the Force is just described in these really amazing ways, and they really make you think, and so I'm really loving the High Republic now.
So since you talked about High Republic and you did the Light of the Jedi one, here's my other question. Production wise, the antagonist, I don't know why I'm blanking on his name right now, the leader of the Nihil, or Marcion Rowe. How much of that was your voice doing that? How much was post? Because it sounded almost like it was like compressed, or there was something like, are they doing that on the back end? That's not you actually making it.
There's an effect they're using because all the Nihil are wearing these helmets and stuff. So there's an effect, there's a compression they're adding to it for the helmet effect. But the scenes where he takes his helmet off, that's
Right.
all my voice.
Okay.
Like,
Wow. Amazing.
we were kind of putting this like very light, because what I thought was interesting about Marcion Rowe was that he starts off as like just kind of it's like almost like the navigator. Like he's not like it almost seems like he's in service of everyone else, and then
Right.
like as the book goes on, you're like, oh wow, there's a lot more to this guy, and it's kind of like, so you underestimate him at first. So I was trying to play with that with the voice, where it wasn't necessarily a voice where you would hear it and first think, oh, this is this big bad guy. It was more like this very like kind of like weird creepy thing, and then like so it was interesting to play with like that, and I really like where that character's going.
Well, and to piggyback off what Joe said earlier, I obliterated that book shoveling snow. So thank you for the great read while we did that.
Oh, that's cool.
That's one of the things when I've talked to other podcasters, obviously it's the first time I've spoken with someone who does audiobooks, but when I talk to other podcasters, one of the things, whether I'm on their show or they're on our show, I'll tell them, how many times, and Brent brought it up last week, how many times I'm in my car and I'm having arguments with the speakers, but it's not really me having the argument with them, right? Because they're like friends, but they're not really there. They're just in my ears. And same thing with the books. Like you'll be reading along and I'll be listening, and you're sitting there going, oh no, and you're getting animated thinking about it because, like you said, you're reading it so well. Then the sound effects, then the music, and it's but you can do it while you're shoveling snow, while you're driving your car, while you're cutting your grass. So it's a really good mix. I think it's a really good getaway. Go ahead, Brent.
So I'm gonna say this, that these guys pulled me down to the dark side, but I also want to say that you are also a major reason for pulling me down to the dark side. So I'll go back. I was not a big reader. I've never been a big reader. I've consumed my Star Wars through the visual medium, which is, and I'll go even further because like high fantasy to me is hard to read. So like when I read fantasy, like I like my Harry Potter because it's grounded in reality. So it is fantasy. But when you get into like the Nihil versus with the High Republic, I'm getting into a little bit higher level fantasy. Lord of the Rings, it's harder for me to read, to picture different alien species, and I just want those to be shown to me, because for me to try to picture them, it gets a little bit harder. But these guys have pestered me to get into the books, and one of the co-hosts, Mass, was like, it's not just the book, it's the audio behind it, right? So I want to say starting last October, so we're not even a full year, and I've when you say like I've listened to Audible, I've listened to about 9 days worth of Star Wars books on Audible since October.
Oh my gosh. That's crazy.
And I want to say 80% of them have been you.
Oh, wow. Thanks. Yeah. Thanks
so like,
oh, Brent loved the Old Republic because you did all those, right? So
like it started with Darth Bane, and that happened right around my fall break. So I'm an educator, so I'm in the world. I have a fall break. And I basically devoured all 3 books in 4 days.
Oh, wow. Holy moly.
Yeah. And so because, case being made, I was also building terrain for my Star Wars game, and it was all just kind of all like I had time and it was there, and it caught my interest. And as I was making the terrain, I was getting excited as I was listening to it. But I've seriously devoured a bunch of Star Wars books because of the production value and because of your character popping. So I want to thank you for pulling me down the dark side. Because once you start, forever will it dominate your journey and your destiny. As I've been told many times on the podcast. But no, it's like your book reading and everything that you've been involved with. So I was excited to get into this. When Joe said that you reached out, and whoever reached out, and
I reached out to him first. Yes, I will take the blame. I did.
So however we connected, I'm so happy for the connection, because again, I would never really have gotten into the books, and I'm still holding out hope. And this is nothing about you. I'm holding out hope that they put the High Republic into some sort of cartoon visual, some sort of something, because I think it would make I'm excited about it. It's like one of those, the other timeline of my life is like the new. I want to see something new, and I feel like the High Republic is so new. But again, I kind of want you to give it to me in a visual, and I would love to see you be a part of it. But
I would love that.
But as we were getting towards the end, I wanted to thank you for dominating my car drives. So now instead of listening to sports talk radio, I'm listening to Audible and audiobooks.
That's awesome.
Nick, I'll let you, before I close up shop here with Mark, I'll let you throw some things in there as well.
No, I would say the exact same, Mark. Seriously, just I know you mentioned it earlier, sitting in the booth, by yourself can be hard doing this stuff, but really, I mean, I think of listening to these books and just loving them, and especially like I was sitting here thinking about just what it takes to put those together and how good they have to be for people who are like visually and maybe even people that aren't necessarily readers, like to totally miss the medium and like have the pictures going on up here because of what's being communicated. So that's a huge feat. So just thank you a ton. Seriously, I wish I had a running count of how many hours I had spent. I say I wish I did, and then I also am really glad I don't, because I would show that to my wife and she would go, "Oh my gosh, you big nerd." So, but seriously, Mark, this has been just a treat. So thank you for jumping on with us tonight.
And Mark, before I close shop, what I would ask is, what are some ways that people can support you? Is it just buying the audiobooks? Is there a certain way? Is there a way how do they follow you on Twitter, social media, all those things? Feel free, spout it out now, and we'll put it in the notes as well, so we can let everybody know.
Oh yeah. I'm Captain Ehud on Instagram and Twitter. and I'm just Marc Thompson on Facebook, MarcThompson. And I have a website, markthompson.net. It's mainly just to try to for my work purposes, but I have little things on there if people want to check that out. And but yeah, and yeah, I think just there's a Facebook group where Star Wars book fans have gathered, and that's a great way to. I know a lot of the producers and Penguin and Random House people will look at that stuff, and if you like the books, just keep checking them out. That always helps, and yeah, and I just just thank you everyone. Thank you for all the kind things you guys have said tonight, and anyone that's ever commented on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram. I read those comments. I don't always have time to reply to them all, but it really does mean a lot to me, and it really inspires me to want to work harder and do the best I can, because I know how important it is to everybody, and I feel the same way. Like I love this stuff as much as you guys do, and it really fuels me. Your encouragement is fueling me every time I get in the booth. So thank you to everybody out there for all your support. It really means a lot to me. So
Well, and I'll close up with this and just say exactly like those guys said, how much it means to us that you would take the time to, we're three, there's 7 or 8 of us, but us 3 here tonight in Rule the Galaxy. To have someone, we had Gecko the Bounty Hunter, Dominic Pace, who
oh wow,
he was on The Mandalorian. To have him come on the show, we just geeked out completely, thinking this guy has talked to these actors, he's been in, and to have you who has been involved with so many things in the Star Wars universe, and it just means a lot to us. And for a guy, I just turned 50, like I said last week, and to know that Star Wars has been a part of my life for 44 years, to be able to talk to like Adam Bray, who's an author, of many Star Wars related books and materials. It means the world to us that you guys would take the time, and it shows me that the Star Wars community is much bigger and better than social media will let you know, because fans are a lot better than what they put out there, and the people who are involved, like you and Adam and Dominic, you're real people who do this for a job, but you're fans as well, and you're really good to the people who support you. So thank you for taking the time. Thanks for being a part of our show.
Yeah.
We hope to have you back if there's a time in the future, anything you want to talk about or promote, we want to have you back. And I'm sure Alfie, who's usually one of our biggest geeks on the show, he probably hates that he had to miss tonight, but I'm sure there's 10, each other person in our group has 10 more questions to ask you. But thank you. We'll have you back sometime, and if there's ever anything you need from us or anything to be promoted, you let us know, and we appreciate it. So thank you very much.
Thank you guys. This was great.
So for Nick Shesky, for Brent Dykman, for me, Joe in the pilot seat, and our special guest, Marc Thompson, thanks for being a part of the Rule of the Galaxy this week. As always, you know where to follow us. You know what to do. We're here for you. We love being a part of what the Star Wars community is all about. But until next week, may the Force be with you.